Hi everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Hope you're all well. My name is Rosie Tanner and I work in the marketing department at Italic. We are joined with Redstor today. Ed Rennick will be delivering the presentation. So just before we start, I'll just pop a poll up if you don't mind answering the question. It's just to see what data backup system you might be currently using, which might be useful. In this webinar, we'll be discussing how you can gain control over data, highlighting the need to ensure data is protected and that data growth doesn't become a challenge. We'll also close with a Q&A session towards the end. So if you do have any questions, if you could put them in the questions section that you can see on that panel in front of you. So we'll run through them then, and yeah, so over to you, Ed, if you're ready.
I'm Ed Rennick, and I'm delighted to be presenting to you today on behalf of Italic and Redstor. In a world where data volumes are always on the rise and organizations are becoming more and more reliant on the data they create, how can you keep control of spiraling data costs? So in this webinar, we'll be discussing how you can gain control over your data, highlighting the need to ensure data is protected and that data growth doesn't become a challenge. If we've got time, guys, we'll run through a live Q&A, but if we do run out of time, any questions that you guys post, we'll come back to you directly afterwards. All right, I just want to make sure the slides are turning. Can you see the second slide, Rosie, just to make sure?
Yes, you can, yeah.
Right, beautiful. Okay. All right, guys, I won't dwell on this slide too much, but really just to give some context, Redstor have been around for 25 years now. We are headquartered in the UK, in Reading. Our help desk, support guys, field guys, sales, marketing, customer services, everything is based in the UK. And then we have a physical presence in all of the areas where you can see the Redstor logo. And then majority of the time we tend now, and we'll cover this in the slide deck, we tend to use a lot of the hyperscale cloud environments, the Microsoft, the Amazon, and to a lesser extent the Google environments as well. As you can see, we're tripping well over 100 million restores a year, and that is going up on a fairly exponential basis, particularly in light of the last 12 months and the increase in threat with ransomware and such malicious threats like that. Okay, all right, just another very quick contextual slide. As you guys can see, you may not have come across Redstor. We're one of those best kept secrets in the market. We historically have done a lot of marketing by stealth, but as you can see, we are recognized by all of the independent assessors in our industry, this one particularly from the IDC. But as you can see, Redstor play into almost all of the categories for data protection as a service, data movement as a service, and these are the areas that we're kind of going to be focusing on today. And so we've obviously a number of significant challenges we typically see around data protection. These really haven't changed probably in the last 5 to 10 years. They just change in their order of importance. But for example, we've seen huge rises in the number of cases of ransomware, particularly in the education space, leading to the NCSC issue in all schools in the UK with new guidance on actually how to cope with that kind of threat. The key challenge we're going to be talking about today factors in exponential data growth, and that essentially leads to rising data management costs, putting pressure on IT teams and their budgets. So data is now a vital asset in many businesses, whether it's through analytics and understanding customers better, or simply ensuring system efficiency, or even day-to-day operations. Data is at the heart of all organizations, and we are all created more and more of, we are creating more and more of it every day. The last 12 months have contributed to this, and the need for remote working led to over 115 million active daily users on platforms such as Teams. And from a personal perspective, We all own and use smartphones and devices, and in 2020, a population of 1.4 trillion photos were taken. Data volumes double every 2 years, and we're now talking exabytes, which is thousands of petabytes, and even zettabytes. IDC have predicted that globally by 2025, there will be close to 200 zettabytes of data in existence. So as we can see, guys, and you will all have seen this, it's not just producing new data. It's about having multiple copies of the same files as well. So we may think that we are producing lots and lots of new files. We are, but we're also, in the way we're managing the data, creating lots and lots of copies of the same files as well, which is still leading to that data growth challenge. So how does it affect your organization? Well, we've all become data hoarders. As storage becomes easier to access and data volumes balloon, the idea of deleting data is often ignored. The just-in-case factor often plays a part. In reality. Around 70% of all business data we create becomes redundant, obsolete, or trivial, and is not regularly accessed after only a short amount of time following its creation. When it comes to big data, IDC states that up to 90% of it is unstructured. For some of this means leaving valuable information on the table and presents an opportunity for AI machine learning. But for most of us, that just means that we don't have an accurate picture of what data we have. And a lot of that data, that unstructured data, is what we are seeing being moved into production level environments like Microsoft 365 and Google Workplace. And we'll cover those on subsequent slides. So the growth of data presents challenges for all businesses, and the most common is cost. As bigger data sets have direct and indirect effects on how IT budget is spent. Let's take a look at some of the ways that your growing data sets may be costing you more than you actually realize. So we'll just kind of run through these in order. So losing control of your data. As mentioned, for many organizations, it can quickly become difficult to keep track of what data is being created and which of this data is useful or critical. In addition, as new users or systems are added, data is being created in more places. In the event that data starts being created or stored outside of the standardized systems, we call that shadow IT, there can be a risk to the security of this data, leading to data protection issues or simply presenting issues in the event that data is lost and can actually not be recovered. All tools can become blunt. So the last year has shown us how quickly things can change, and there is no denying that data management and protection has come a long way in the last few decades, as well as a shift in how we consume services. Newer services and solutions work on as a service model, and where you only pay for what you use. Older models, services and solutions don't account for this, making them very clunky and expensive. And as we already know, storage costs go up and up. As data grows, your IT teams have to add to existing solutions, storing more data for longer. And this could mean ordering new kit, new servers, tape, libraries, or hiring additional physical storage space, unless you're able to find a scalable way of managing that data and the costs locally. As we know, there's always a hidden cost of recovery. So when it comes to data protection, backing up and protecting the data is only part of it. The more vital task is being able to recover and access the data in the event of a disaster, outage, or deletion. And some solutions may appear cost effective, have low running costs or minimal ingress charges, but checking all those costs are key. As well as the grey costs like heating and cooling of kit, some solutions may have egress charges that will hit you with a hefty bill, or for example, may charge you on data stored. So take into account all of the historic recoverable data you need to keep and charge you for that as well. So, and then finally, paying to store data that you'll never use. Whether, if you remember what we talked about earlier, that high percentage of what we call rot data, redundant, obsolete, or trivial data that we are keeping on our systems, whether it's for disaster recovery purposes or archive. It's still a commonplace for some organizations to invest in infrastructure to store data in a second or alternative site. And this can be extremely costly, especially for DR scenarios that may never actually be realized. So factoring in your cloud data, and as we've seen over the last 12 months, cloud platforms like Microsoft 365 and Google Workplace have become really important part of our lives, our personal and business lives. And as we've also seen, services like Netflix and Spotify give us access to all kinds of content at the click of a button. And many businesses are starting to embrace the cloud when it comes to how they work on a daily basis. So if we think about this adoption into Microsoft, if we think about that adoption into Google, particularly around all of that unstructured data that we talked about earlier, what is the bit that we need to factor in here? It's one thing hoofing all of that data into the Microsoft 365 environment, but it is, after all, still a production environment. This environment still needs protected, and as you can see from this slide, there is almost a misunderstanding in the marketplace that there is a reliance that, or an assumption that Microsoft are handling the data protection of the data on the platform. Let's not forget, this is a production environment, and what we've done is stretched from having all of our data locally to now having it locally and in the Microsoft cloud. But as you can see quite clearly, Microsoft are not taking responsibility for any of the key reasons that would cause downtime for you guys. Human errors, internal human errors, programmatic errors, and the big one that we're all seeing increasing on an exponential scale is the malicious threat, both inside and external. So Microsoft aren't protecting that data for that kind of threat. And so applications like OneDrive and SharePoint, they power much of the collaboration capabilities within 365. However, that collaboration can be put in jeopardy with things like user error, hacking, sync issues, malicious insiders. They can all cause data loss. And both of those apps are leveraging primary and secondary recycle bins with 93-day retention, but they can be emptied at any time. And Microsoft has released a OneDrive restore feature, but it's a rollback on a destructive restore, which means if we're at day 29 and we need to restore to day 2, we lose all of the changes that we made between those 2 points in time. So it's not an ability to have a non-destructive restore to a point in time and enable you to get access to the data quickly. It is a very destructive way of getting back to a different point in time. And this is no different, guys, for Google. Google playing exactly the same lane. They don't protect that data either, and they also recommend that you regularly back that content up with a third party such as Redstor in a very seamless fashion, where you can get access to that data regardless of the scenario at the time in an instant fashion. So what can you actually do about it? Data protection is an important part of any IT strategy, so staying on top of costs while ensuring data is still protected is key. So key things to look out for when implementing or reviewing a solution that won't cause long-term pain with inflated costs. So effectively future-proofing yourself, or essentially looking at where you can go in terms of where you are now to a more kind of holistic off-site kind of cloud version of the world. So first off, ensuring that the solution takes a cloud-first approach and requires no CapEx investment into infrastructure. This allows low to no setup costs, allows for scalable data growth, and it takes advantage of the software model. So you're not relying on hardware, the support and the maintenance and everything else that goes with that. Someone else would be on the hook for that on your behalf. a solution with transparent and predictable pricing. So this may sound simple, but a solution that's priced like Redstor on the amount of data that you protect per gig per month is going to be very easy to manage, rather than working on complicated licensing models, never really having a feel for what your data is doing and where it sits, when you last accessed it, etc., etc. You'll be looking for policy-driven automated archiving, which can free up valuable primary storage space, free up your IT admin from manually doing that work, and effectively get you into a position where you're proactively managing all of your endpoints, all of your server environment in an automated fashion with the software. So that's another kind of headache gone, and another set of resources freed up from your IT team. And a unified solution for backup, DR, and archiving. That is possible. And if your organization is implementing multiple solutions, it's likely that the cost will start to stack up by flipping around different vendors. So by unifying your solutions into one, you can discover, manage, and protect data from a single location for a single price per gig. And just finally, guys, as you can see down the left-hand side, the Redstor solution caters for effectively protecting every type of data, structured and unstructured, within your environment. So as you can see, it's servers, but it's physical and it's virtual machines. And in our ability to recover, we can migrate from VMware to vSphere. We can migrate you from a physical to a virtual machine. So we can actually help you take that step away from traditional and move into this more kind of modern day on-demand style data management principle. You get access to all of your cloud data, and we can protect all of your devices, full application support, network shares. And if you are using local exchange, that is something we can also support. So on the left-hand side of the wheel, you can see all of the areas that we protect. The middle of the wheel are the core functions, and we haven't really had a chance to delve into these, but we have an ability to instantly map your data directly to you on a per user basis, driven by the user on demand, regardless of the actual scenario taking place at the time. And as you can see on the right of the wheel, these are all of the flexible options you would have in terms of where you deliver, where you recover your data to. We can flip it into a hyperscale public cloud environment. We can recover it back to on-premise. We can even recover it using your mobile phone through an app that we have. So hopefully we've shown you some ways in which, some guiding principles in which you can follow and work with an organization like Redstor to help you simplify and reduce costs and hopefully automate some of the standard tasks that you guys are undertaking, all with a premise of basically bringing down your costs around managing your data. So that is the presentation done. We are open. We do have 5 minutes. So if there is any questions, Rosie, or guys, if you want to throw those out live, I'm ready to answer.
Yeah, I'll have a look. So I've got one. How is the solution priced?
The solution, we do this very differently to everyone in the marketplace. So we find the truest way, the most honest way of billing against data protection. It sounds very odd, but actually just billing you against the data that you've selected to protect. So what that means is that we don't bill you against the amount of users. We don't bill you against the way you've architected your environment, physical or virtual. We don't care at a billing level about how many sockets you have, how many virtual machines to guests. What we do is we effectively look at the data you've selected based on a price per gig per month. So that means it's very predictable for you. You can see what the costs are going to be. And because we include all of the historic data, i.e. your recoverable data, and set no limit against the amount of recovery points you put in place, it proves a very, very useful model very predictable going forward. So to kind of give you an example of that, if you had 1 terabyte of data that you wanted to protect, and in a year's time you didn't do any growing, we'd only still be billing you for that 1 terabyte. We don't bill for all of that historic data that we've got in the background. And from a cloud perspective, that's important. Some of our competitors bill on data stored, so they include that historic data in the bill, but that doesn't become apparent till you get 4, 5, 6 months down the track, and all of a sudden see that spike happen. So we find this, and we work with over 60% of the education sector. We work with over 15% of local government, and we work in almost every other sector that I could name right now. One of the reasons that we do that is because of the simple pricing model and that ability to be very predictable and very granular about what you select. If you want a full system protected, that's fine. If you just want one file on a laptop in a My Documents folder, and it's 1 kilobit in size, then it's 1 kilobit we're going to be billing you for. So you can really get down to an item level or right up to a full system.
So we've just got a couple more. Can the solution protect data with a local copy?
That's a great question. Absolutely. So again, this is an area that a lot of our competition are wholly predicated on a backup server being held locally. That's not something we put in. This is a software only solution. However, if our customer or users want to keep copies local, because obviously the single point of failure and all of this is your connection, you are able to keep as much data locally as you want to on your own equipment, and that carries no cost from Redstor. So again, it's only built on that front end selected. Any data that you wish to store locally on your own hardware, that is entirely up to you how far back you go with that and how much data you store. That's built in. There is no cost associated to that.
Great, thank you. So I think we've got time for just one more. How secure is the data with Redstor?
That's a great question. And again, we are dealing with ransomware attacks almost on a 3-4 times a week at the moment, particularly in the education space. And this is where Redstor really stand up. So we sit at 256K bit at rest, and we also run it 128-bit SSL encrypted tunneling in transit. So we've got dual encryption running, and the beauty of this is Redstor don't ever see the encryption key either. So our customer, the user, sets their own encryption key. It is unique to them, and no one else can get their hands on that. So in the event of a ransomware attack, that is very straightforward to deal with. The data is already encrypted. The threat actors can't encrypt something again that's already been encrypted. So simply all we do is we have the confidence that we've locked the data in. We simply roll back to a clean point in time where the malware content wasn't installed, and we can recover that data, and away we go from there.
Brilliant, thanks Ed, that was really really helpful, and hope everyone found it useful too. So if you would be interested in a free 30-day demo, please do get in touch with us and we'll happily arrange it with you. You can contact us info@italic.co.uk. Excuse me. If you wouldn't mind answering a short survey, I'm actually losing my voice right now. If you wouldn't mind answering a short survey following the webinar, it will be really appreciated, and it'll be, yeah, it's really valuable to us. It'll only take a couple of minutes as there's only a couple of questions on there. So yeah, thanks everyone, and have a fabulous day.
Thank you.